My Lobster Magnet. Lobsters and I told you grab it.
Welcome, all of my fellow enhanced super soldiers, to another Uber review of Uber Invasion Issue 12. It was so fun to hear, like, from all of you guys saying, like, hey man, issue 12's out, issue 12's out. I'm like, I know, I went through a snowstorm to get my hands on it, but it was really nice to hear all of your, like, comments, and one guy even emailed me, like, the digital link, so I can actually include images from the digital copy for this review. Yeah, woohoo! But yeah, Uber came a little bit earlier than the end of March. The preview dates are always wrong. So, because I love doing this so much, here's a little update on where we are right now. Fresh news from the front line! The German advance has been stopped! Thousands of brave Americans gave their lives as the United States deployed its last atomic bomb to put a stop to the German menace. With battleship Sigmund defecting towards the Allies, things are worse than ever for Germany. With only one battleship left, Germany now works on their final gambit to seize victory from the jaws of defeat. So this issue, we finally get to peer into how things are going with Germany, and we get to look at how they're doing, after the invasion. And things are not good in the motherland. Kieran Gillen lays down a little bit of a bombshell in terms of, like, showing us how old Siegfried was, Marcus's age, and apparently he was only 14 years old, which was a brilliant little thing on his choice, because, like, we always assume that he's, like, this 20-something asshole, but now, like, everything about his characterization makes so much more sense, and because we got to see, like, the battleship Britannia go from, like, a little 13-year-old girl to, like, a full-grown woman after her activation, Kieran, you are top class writing guy. That was very impressive. I liked how you, like, gave us that little bit of information and then, paid it off further by revealing how old, good old battleship Siegfried was. And now we just see that he was just this immature little boy. He was basically the equivalent of a German school shooter who was turned into this hulking, murdering man-child who was just awful, and everyone was justified in hating him. So that was a really fun little and disturbing reveal that, he was so young and, died the death he deserved for being an awful, horrible human being. But it just goes to show you how desperate and horrible things are in Germany. And, we just get the surveying of all these destroyed cityscapes, and Germany is not good. It almost seems like we're getting a little bit towards sort of, like, the overarching themes of Uber with this chapter, in the sense that, like, at first it seems like Kieran Gillen, he says he's not making a story about, the Nazis taking over. This isn't Man in the High Castle. This isn't an alternate history in that sense. He's sort of displaying World War II through the prism of this super-powered, enhanced technology as this sort of apocalyptic thing that is just laying waste to everything. Because, traditionally we have World War II as kind of this heroic frame of reference, despite the fact of the tremendous loss of life and all the horrible atrocities that were done during the course of it. But we still see it as heroic because we had this bad guy of Germany, and we ultimately defeated, the world's first real supervillain. But now we're getting a sort of sense that, like, the sort of overall theme of Uber, which is that, war is a catastrophic thing that ultimately destroys the people who perpetuate it and the people who defend it. So we have a point where, like, basically, despite the fact that Germany has this incredible technology, that because they've laid such waste to their allies with their total war and the Great Burn, that, like, they can't even use the allies they've conquered's resources to recover. Like, France is uninhabitable, Britain is, like, completely crushed, their fleet is completely destroyed because the German is, basically burnt it with their halos, to the point where, like, Germany's this dying, decayed body, and they can't even use the resources they've gained from conquering other people to help bolster their, dying self. And, this chapter wasn't really bombastic. It was definitely much more subdued, which, was also good. Although I'm pissed at you, Kieran. You only had 22 pages. I counted. We usually get at least 24 pages in our, usual issues of Uber. So I was very disappointed. I wanted some more pages to, like, you know, of course, move the story a little bit long. You know, nothing pisses me off than when we get those, like, one-page spreads and it's just, like, one image. Because, like, to me, it feels like I need every little piece of information of Uber I can get. So when you do that, you're just, like, you know, denying me more information. But, you know, the Marcus head bust was definitely a nice little reveal. But, you know, I would have preferred to have learned more information than just getting that one page. So I feel a little cheated this week. But still, it was good to see how desperate things are. And yet, again, Project Gutenrang, or, you know, what's it translated out? I'm going to look this up. Okay, so Roberto Santillan commented on, said, "You was right, Jar Jar. Battleship Zero is coming. Possibly an army of imperfect Uber soldiers. I can't wait to see the prospect of Sunset of God in action." So that's what it is. Project Gutenrang translates to Sunset of God. So yet again, Kieran Gillian is teasing us with another Uber invasion, or, you know, another Uber development, a new superhuman type. And I can't wait to see what it was. The Zephyr was, like, built up forever. Ultimately, it lived up to the hype. It was fantastic. You know, the Zephyr was exactly what I wanted. So that's why I am very excited to see what this, like, final form, the Sunset of the God project that we'll see. In my mind's eye, I have, like, a bunch of dumb ideas, that, like, it's just, like, these Ubers who have, like, rocket legs, and then they just, like, pal around, and then just, like, you know, but Kieran says that he doesn't want flying Ubers due to the fact that would kind of break the continuity. But what'll probably happen is, like, my vision is it'll be just like this Uber nuclear weapon where it's like this guy who, like, you know, directs his halo effect inward and he just blows up like an atomic bomb. And that, like, you know, in the final chapters of Uber, we see, like, the Russians are there, the Americans are there. They've got, like, you know, a bunch of battleships, lots of cruisers. They just have this huge force of enhanced humans. And then we have, like, one Project Gutenrang, who's, like, basically a two activation candidate, and it just suicide bombs. Because Kieran Gillian says that, like, at the end of Uber, like, you know, he says that implies that, like, basically, no, you know, there's just going to be ashes and destruction, and that's all that's going to be left. That's all that we're going to see. It's just going to be awful and miserable, and that sort of fits into the core themes that he's been building of Uber in terms of that, you know, this is a fight that nobody wins. This is something that just leaves the world eternally devastated. And, you know, the final Project Gutenrang is probably going to be something along those lines, something so devastating and self-destructive that, you know, it doesn't necessarily win Germany the war, even though they're implying that it could, but just leaves everything in waste, because Germany's in a horrible shape. And oh my god, that scene with Shell, where she's like, you know, this could all be over, Sieglinde, if you just surrendered. And Sieglinde's like, kind of like, maybe, but you know what, I still hate them. And then she's, you know, nonchalantly says, oh, ha ha ha, well, good thing your bitter cup has not run over, ha 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 ha. And then that final reveal where we learn that she, you know, your room was bugged. And then they carry her off to the side, and then they're going to let her live, but they're going to cut out her tongue because she's just too difficult to replicate, and they're going to cut off her arms. But she still has her eyes, so who knows? Maybe she'll escape somehow, or maybe she just gave up because she knows she can be overpowered. But yeah, things are desperate, and apparently good old Nazi Germany is going to try one desperation plan to buy themselves time. They're going to lure out Battleship Zero with, like, cookies, point it into the direction of the Russian, and, you know, hope it does the best. So that leaves a lot of interesting questions about Battleship Zero in terms of, like, is Battleship Zero, like, how many activations did Battleship Zero have before it became, like, its deformed monster? Because, like, you know, they seem to, like, think that it could be powerful enough to hopefully, you know, counter Maria. It'll definitely catch her off by surprise, but, you know, they can't control Battleship Zero. All they can do is, like, steer it in the direction and hope for the best. And honestly, if I had to guess, I think it's probably more along the lines of, like, maybe a cruiser in terms of strength. So I feel like Maria shouldn't have too much trouble. But I think what's going to happen, and poor Maria, it looks like, because in the next issue, if you look at the preview thing, it says, you know, round 2 between Sieglinde and Maria. So I'm excited to see that. And honestly, Maria should win. But I feel like they've been building her up as something tragic's going to happen to her. And Maria's also a glass cannon, in that sense that she's probably has like a 20-2 or 22-2 or 20-4 activation ratio. She obviously is much more specialized towards her halo than strength. So, you know, if you have, like, one thing that's, like, diverting her attention, that means that you could probably kill her pretty easily by coming up from behind and surprising attacking. So the idea is that, like, you know, because they can't control Battleship Zero, they're gonna unleash it, she'll be sent in to respond towards it, subdue it. Assumingly it'll be powerful enough to at least distract her, and while she's taking it out, Sieglin comes from behind and then takes her out. Which, I feel like that's how it's gonna play out. Honestly, if she was, like, facing both of them, she should be able to, like, devastate them very easily, given the fact that Battleship Zero is uncontrollable, it's not smart, it's a feral creature from what we've seen. It doesn't have any ration or reason, it just lashes out because it's in constant pain. So, you know, that should be relatively easy for her to deal with. And Sieglin, as we've seen before, even when she was at her full capacity, could not stand up to, you know, Maria, and now she's, like, even worse. The only advantage she has is the fact that, you know, she knows what to expect. But, you know, she's not as physically able. She's, like, crippled. It's amazing that she's even walking around, given the fact the last time we saw her, she had to be carried around in a freaking, like, Uber wheelchair, essentially. Sadly enough, it looks like we're not going to get an Uber cripple fight that I wanted between her and good old, what's her name? Why am I forgetting this? Leah. Yeah, we're not going to get a fight between her and Britain, the Uber cripple fight. But, you know, now we're going to see her against the horrible monstrosity of Battleship Zero and Sieglin. So things are pretty shitty for Germany. Things are pretty shitty and desperate, but they're just, like, you know, begging to hold up time, and it's amazing. If Sieglin surrendered, it would be over. And even the whatchamacallit, you know, guy who's, like, you know, holding her, like, little rope, it says that, like, you know, if she doesn't come back, then we might as well sit here because it's over. The battleship is the only thing that's holding our defensive line, and we are just completely screwed. So, you know, I'd give this chapter an 8. It was definitely a good, solid piece of progression. Of course, I want more. I'm just such a... I hate being teased. I hate, you know, waiting to know what the Sunset of God is. I want to see that so badly. Ugh. Oh, you know, it's probably really obvious given the fact that, like, pretty much most of the Uber stuff is, like, followed along the lines of, like, traditional superpowers, except for the Halo effect. The Halo effect's kind of like the unique Uber-specific thing that, you know, doesn't really feel comparable to, like, you know, in terms of, like, how many versatile uses it has to other superhero things. But I'm sure that, like, the Valley of the Gods is going to be some sort of superpower, just like how the Zephyr is, like, a super speed. I don't know, strength, speed. Maybe it'll be, like, an uber psychic, like, Green Lantern, and it's, like, this guy who can, like, use his energy field to, like, make psychic projections. But that feels a little too fantasy-ish for Uber and a little too out there. Like, I still am, you know, thinking it's going to be, like, this guy who's, like, you know, this fucking halo aura on his legs, and he's just, like, rocketing around and bombing everything. But that's obviously a stupid, terrible, dumb idea. But, you know, we'll have to see. It's another wait. Right now, it's telling us that Uber Invasion is going to come in the end of May, which sucks, and I hope it's, like, either the beginning of May or the beginning of April, because, you know, I'm impatient. I want more Uber. Obviously, I'm so glad that you and my super-powered, enhanced, you know, forces are on this journey with me, and that I've managed to create a small audience of people who are, like, dedicated to following this comic, which, you know, it makes it all worthwhile, you know, putting into this time for, like, you know, the comic that does not get... It's really funny. When I went to pick up the comic store, I was talking to the comic book shop, and the guy was, like, saying, oh, yeah, all the guys who come and pick up Uber, they say it's, like, the best thing that's out right now, but nobody else reads it. And I'm like, yep, Kieran Gillian does a good job. It's funny, because he's a popular guy, but, like, you know, because it's in that Avatar Press ghetto, it doesn't seem to, like, attract a bigger audience, which is a shame. I think Uber is fantastic. You know, it's one of my favorite things in all of media right now. And, you know, I'm sad and also looking forward to the fact that, like, you know, it feels like we're getting towards the end point. It feels like, you know, we're going to get Project Gutenrang, Valley of the Gods, Sunset of the Gods, and then that'll probably, you know, be 1 or 2 issues after that. And it'll probably wrap up around issue 20, and that'll be the end of the series. You know, once that's over and we have an idea of, like, you know, what the full story is, I have a few ideas for, like, dumb spin-offs, and maybe I'll make a video on that, and I'll send it to Kieran Gillian, because all my spin-off ideas are terrible. But, you know, in my dreams, I like to think that Kieran will, you know, like the universe so much that he wants to do a follow-up, because I'm really interested in terms of, like, what the post-war landscape, you know, is once, you know, you got all these people with superpowers running around and how that affects the course of history. because, God, there's just so much stuff I want to see. But anyway, thank you guys for being patient. I'm sorry I didn't get this out to you guys sooner. I had another really big project that I was working on that I unfortunately might not be able to show you. Maybe someday. We'll figure something out. But thank you so much for hanging out. Hang in there, enhanced troops. Reinforcements are coming, and let's stick it to the Krauts. Let's stick it to goddamn Germany. Zephyrs, Maria, hell yeah. And remember, lobsters and tennis, but don't you grab it.